Hello, Empowered Warriors. You may have already noticed that this is a bonus episode, and that is because May is the 1-year anniversary of the Empowered Warrior podcast. So I have a lot of treats for you, and I'm going to explain another treat later on in this episode, which is an opportunity to win a one-on-one hour-long coaching call with me. So if you listen further, you'll get all the instructions. I'll also drop them in the show notes so you have everything that you need in order to enter. Make sure you enter because this is an amazing opportunity for you to learn more about your own transformation and getting the life you want by having a coaching call with me. So make sure you do that. And in today's episode, I am talking a little bit about a lot of things. My intention was to really hone in on guilt and shame, but I ended up going a lot further and talking about self-worth, self-confidence, self-esteem. I am just feeling really fired up about making sure that you get the best content for this reopening that's happening in the world right now, and that you can continue to be the empowered warrior that you truly know you are. So warriors, I cannot wait to deliver this to you. I had so much fun recording it. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Empowered Warrior podcast. My name is Angela Noel, and I am an intuitive coach, acupuncturist, and Chinese herbalist. This podcast is all about empowerment, meaning how you can maintain your personal power in order to have the best life beyond your imagination. An empowered warrior is someone who has the identity of a person who is healthy, radiant, and free from all suffering, and has the tools ready and available to move through life's obstacles with confidence, ease, and a sense of freedom. In this podcast, I bring over 16 years experience in Chinese medicine, countless years of self-development, and a passion for helping others find their personal power. I will be discussing just a few of my favorite topics regarding health from a Chinese medicine perspective, brain habits, and spirituality, so that you can quickly pave your pathway to freedom and be free from the chains that have kept you stuck. My intention with this podcast is to serve as a guide for warriors who want to form a healthy foundation of body, mind, and spirit, and sustain it by changing who they are being from the inside and having a stronger connection to their higher selves. My goal is to help students end the unnecessary suffering that they place on themselves by having poor health habits, negative thought loops, and a lack of self-worth. I'm so happy that you're here. Hello, Empowered Warriors. Welcome to another episode. First of all, I want to say happy May of 2021. It is May 2nd on the date of this recording. It is Sunday. I'm just hanging out at home. I'm in bed, actually. I don't know about you, but if this pandemic has allowed me to appreciate anything, it's being able to do a lot of things in bed. And I'm talking about just everyday things like writing in my journal, meditating. Sometimes I just want to work in bed, and I do that, and I just find it to be so nurturing, so comfortable. I'm just getting back from a visit at my parents' house in New York, and it was a really great time. But I have to tell you, I am such a homebody. That's one thing I've learned about myself, is I really enjoy being home, and I'm sitting here in my bed recording this podcast. I got the inspiration to do it, so as an entrepreneur, you probably already know that when creativity talks to you, when creativity arrives, you go with it. So I am recording this with my cat and my dog, we're all cuddled together. Actually, the dog is on the floor. She's not really allowed on the bed, but my kitty Belle is here, and we're just having we're having a little party, a little podcast party. So before I move on, I'm talking today about guilt, but I want to make a really important announcement. And that is that May is the 1-year anniversary of the Empowered Warrior podcast. It actually is on May 29th, my parents' anniversary. That is when I started the podcast last year. So all throughout the month of May, I'm going to be dropping some surprises for you. I don't want to ruin them for you. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but just know, be on the lookout for maybe some surprise episodes, or some other exciting things. But I'm going to announce the first surprise because you're going to need some time for this. You're going to need you may or may not need the whole month of May, but it is a contest that is devoted to the month of May in celebration of the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. And I'm running a contest for you all to enter to win a 1-hour session with me, a 1-hour coaching session. Now, I don't do these things that often anymore. In fact, I think the last time I offered free coaching was when I started coaching, when I was just looking for people to practice on, and that was in 2017. So I haven't offered this in 4 years, but I just feel really aligned to do this. And it came through me, I think, yesterday while I was working in the yard. And I had to keep checking in and make sure, is this something that I really want to do? Because it's often, I'm the type of person that will get an idea and then I'll act on it right away and then realize, it wasn't the right time. So, but this is an opportunity for you if you want to experience what it's like to work with me. And what you need to do, there are a couple of things you need to do, but it will be super easy. So the first thing is to listen to an episode, whether it's this one, whether it's your favorite episode, it doesn't matter which one it is. But listen to an episode, subscribe to the podcast, and take a screenshot of the episode that you're listening to and tag me on Instagram stories at I am Angela Noel with a takeaway, and then tag 2 of your friends who you will think will benefit from this episode. So the takeaway can be really easy. You could just say something like, wow, this is really empowering. Oh, wow, this really helped me today. And tag 2 of your friends and then follow me on Instagram. Okay. So screenshot, follow me on the podcast, add your takeaways on Instagram, tag me at I am Angela Noel, tag 2 of your friends, and then and then follow me on Instagram. And then on May 29th, which is the 1-year anniversary of the podcast release, I will be doing a drawing for a 1-hour session with me. Now, this is an amazing opportunity. If you are wondering, is this for you? Is this something that I want to do? If you are somebody that is struggling with something and you want to live a better life, I tend to attract people who, as the podcast says, empowered warrior. So you want to live a better life. Perhaps you are dealing with issues around self-doubt, self-confidence, self-esteem. You want more out of life. You want to earn more money. And anything really that is causing you to feel that you are not aligned with who you truly are. Like you're meant for more. Apply or not apply. Just it's not really an application. Just follow those 3 or 4 steps and I will make sure that you are entered to win. Okay, so exciting. So how are you, warriors? I feel like it's kind of crazy to consider that it's already May. And a year ago today, we were all sitting in our homes, not really doing anything. I live on a really, not a major road, but I live on a busy road. And one thing that was really striking was how incredibly quiet it was during those couple of months. I mean, there was nobody on the road. And now things are slowly, but surely have been returning to normal. And I'm realizing, oh, wow, things were really quiet last year. And I'm checking in because I'm wondering how you guys are doing. And, I think about people going back and this is becoming kind of a passionate conversation of mine. What is that going to look like? The conversation has been for so long that I can't wait. So many people are like, I can't wait to go back. I can't wait to see my friends and my family. But really, when it has been a habit now to do less, see less people, and basically training your mind, right? Like it's now I talk about brain habits a lot, but you've been training your mind now to be more discerning about how you spend your time and your energy. And now I feel it. I feel it in the collective right now that there's this energy around, oh my God. It's like if you live in New England, I live in New England, like summer in New England. I know it's just not New England, but I grew up in New York, and I swear summer wasn't like this in New York as much as it is in New England. But when summer rolls around, there is this very yang, as in yin and yang. So this very yang, masculine, busy energy of, oh my God, I got to get as much done as possible. I need to see as many people as possible. I need to do as much as possible because here in New England, summer only lasts for 2 months. It's July and August, okay? You can look at the calendar and say, yes, like technically, it's June. It should be more summery here, but if you live in New England, no. It's not summer until it's summer. And even then, it's not always guaranteed. So I wanted to just know basically how you're feeling about reintegrating. And some people may just feel like, everybody's different. And that's another thing that I want to really drive home is that everybody is different as far as how they want to spend their energy and what their tendencies are. And I know that a lot of people spent time in quiet reflection, learning more about themselves and learning more about their preferences. So if you are somebody that it doesn't matter, you can't wait, you want to see as many people as possible, that is amazing. That is amazing. And I'm really excited for you. But if you're somebody that is kind of either in between or just really your priorities have shifted 100%, I also support you and I also hear you. And I invite everybody listening, no matter where you are on this spectrum, to really allow space for the other person and their preferences. Because you probably have already noticed that there's a lot of differing opinions and there's a lot of strife and there's a lot of things going on in the world. And it's really easy to point the finger, isn't it? It's really easy to point the finger and say, well, this isn't fair because it's somebody else's fault. But we are all part of the puzzle, warriors. So simply by respecting each other for whatever decisions they're making, whether it's, I don't really want to get together right now, or, I really, let's not get together right now. Let's just have a phone chat or let's have a Zoom chat or whatever. Wherever people are on the spectrum, I just want to invite everybody to allow space for wherever anybody else is. Because the conversation that I grew up having, and I'm going to be 100% candid here, I have historically been a very judgmental person. And it's something that I have really, really been working on. And what I'm learning is that there's so many reasons, but one thing that I'm really leaning into lately is this idea of attachment. And I'm going to do another episode on attachment, so I don't really want to dive too deep on this, but there's this attachment to how things used to be. And there's this attachment to your expectations. So just because you believe a certain thing or you want a certain thing in your life doesn't mean that the other person is on the same wavelength as you. So this is a pretty wordy invitation and urge to allow space for wherever other people are at. Because when you look at the big picture, this is where it starts. This is where it starts. If you want to make the world a better place and you want to live in a world that's better, or you want to make the world better for your children or for your grandchildren or for the future children, because we're creating a world for the next generations, aren't we? My invitation is to really allow acceptance. First of all, for yourself, because it starts with yourself. When you start to love yourself, when you start to accept yourself, when you start to value and trust yourself, then there will be more space for you to allow the same for others. That is why this work is so important. And when I talk about this work, I'm talking about the inner work. The inner work that a very small percentage of the population is willing to do. And the fact that you listen tells me that you're either in the work or you're curious about the work. Hint, hint. Remember to apply, okay? It's May 2021, by the way. So if you're listening to this down the road, this contest won't be offered after May of 2021. But if you are curious about what a transformational experience is like, what coaching is like, just a hint to apply for, or not apply, enter the contest. Okay. I came on here today because I wanted to talk about guilt. I was listening to, it's Sunday morning, and I'm kind of just, I love Sunday mornings. They're my favorite. It's actually not even Sunday morning anymore. Full confession, it's not Sunday morning anymore. It's now Sunday afternoon. And I was listening to this podcaster, another podcaster, who I've been following on and off for probably almost 10 years, actually. She's a food blogger, and it's interesting because, sometimes I look at the people that I follow and I'm like, why am I following that person? That person's so different from me. But, I tend to follow a lot of different people because I like to experience the conversations that other people are having. And this particular person was talking about this vacation that she went on. It ended up not being what she expected, because it was so crowded there. Because, of course, if you're in the United States, anywhere that's like an exciting place to be besides home, people are flocking to it, right? So I'm not going to give too much away about where she went, but she went to a very popular vacation destination, and she said it was crazy, crazy busy. Like no rental cars, no parking, no reservations, no nothing. And one of the things that she kept talking about was how guilty she felt for not being able to enjoy her vacation, because she was in this beautiful place, and she wasn't enjoying it for the reasons that she had a lot of reasons why she didn't enjoy it. And quite honestly, if I can't say I blame her. If I'm going on vacation, talk about expectations and attachment, I do have expectations and attachment to it being a somewhat relaxing experience. But from what I'm gathering from her, it was not a relaxing experience. In fact, just getting a meal was a challenge. So I want to talk about the concept of guilt, because like many of you, I was one of those people. And it's still something that I work through every single day. Every single day, I am aware of my guilt and I'm aware of my shame. And I grew up with Catholic background. If you're Catholic, you already know that the guilt is real. The guilt is real, warriors. And that's why there's phrases like Catholic guilt, right? Because it's a real thing. The struggle is real. And when she was talking about how guilty she felt, I really felt compassion for her. But at the same time, I realized, I need to talk about this on the podcast because so many of us walk around feeling guilty, don't we? And it's something that is so programmed in us and it's a byproduct of being a good girl or being a good boy or the people-pleasing culture that so many of us grew up in, right? We want to please, we want to be liked, we want to be part of the tribe, like I talk about in so many of the episodes. But what I really want to hone in on is if you are noticing guilt, well, first of all, the first step is if you're somebody who tends to feel guilty, is to notice the guilty feelings, because a lot of people, guilt is so ingrained in their brain, like it's brain based, it's subconscious, it's a brain habit. It's something that's going on in the background that you don't really even realize. It is a brain pathway that's been carved out for, depending on how long you've been on this planet, for decades. And in order to reverse guilt, or I don't want to, reverse is not a good word, but in order to move forward and feel less guilt, the first step to be able to do that is to be aware of when you feel guilty. To be aware of when you feel guilty. So for me personally, I have historically felt guilty when it came to situations where I felt like I was disappointing somebody else, or if I felt like somebody was in pain and somehow I would project my insecurities onto their pain and somehow, and this is totally a codependent behavior. So if you're listening and you're like, I do this, I invite you to look up codependency, because I only realized my codependent behaviors, and most of us it's a spectrum. Most of us have codependent behaviors. Unless you've been exposed to self-development, you've been able to work through those, or you never really developed codependent behaviors. But I have been somebody who would project my feelings onto somebody else's pain and somehow tie myself or entangle myself to their pain and feel guilty. So, my guilty tendencies run pretty deep, and I've healed tremendously. And when I listened to this podcast today, it made me realize, look how far I've come, because I was listening to her talk about her guilt with compassion and realizing, it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. So if you are somebody who has a tendency to feel guilty, like so many of us, women, men, I want to say women, but it's everybody. It's across the board. I want to invite you to consider asking this question after you've become more aware of your guilty tendencies. How are you benefiting from feeling guilty? What is it that is causing you to feel guilty so often? And a lot of people might answer, I receive no benefits from feeling guilty. For constantly feeling shame and guilt, I receive no benefit. But if you really dig deeper, so if you're coming up saying, I don't feel guilty, I invite you to go deeper. Because there is a reason why you're attaching yourself to the guilt, and you are most likely addicted to feeling guilty, because like I said, it's a habit, right? And so many habits are addictive even when it's a brain habit. So what benefit do you get from feeling guilty? For many people, because it's brain-based, because it's a habit, there is a reason why it's serving you. And if you really dive deep, first of all, I really invite you to go into your journal and write about this, because, by the way, guilt is something that you can work. It is not an option. It's not just something that, I'm always going to feel guilty. I feel like so many of us, myself included, okay, I've been there until I started, really doing a lot of personal development work. I always thought that because I'm, a sensitive person and I'm an empath, then that means that I need to feel guilty and I just tend to feel more shame because that's just who I am. And if you're somebody that says things like that, whether it's anger or if you have this, if there's something in your identity around overeating, like I was just on another coaching call last week where we were talking about being Italian, right? And because so many Italians have this in their identity that they like to eat, and a lot of Italians are overweight, and it's just the way they are because they're Italian, or because they're Italian. And I'm just using this as an example. I'm not picking on Italians, obviously, but a lot of people say, well, because I'm Italian or because my husband is Italian, he tends to get more angry than usual. And no, that is not true, okay? All of this stuff, all of these stories around your tendencies and your habits, those can be reversed, okay? But it takes awareness and it takes commitment. And for those of you that are out there saying, I don't know that I'm willing to do that kind of work, it's going to be difficult. Well, let me ask you, if you're not sure about working through your stories and your limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck, or your guilt that is keeping you stuck, then where else in your life are you allowing your stories to hold you back? Because chances are, just, the fact that you are a listener tells me that you're a pretty savvy person and you really want to change your life, or else you would have probably hit stop a long time ago and stopped listening. Because I don't tend to attract people that are quitters. But if you're listening and saying, oh, wow, that's really hard, I don't know that I can do that, and do that kind of inner work to end guilt and shame, or to end my stories around my identity of anger, or being Italian, or being Greek, or being German, or whoever you are, it doesn't matter, then how is that story serving you? And if you are somebody that really wants to transform your life and have more money and more inner peace and better health, more radiance, more energy, you want to be more in balance, you want more self-confidence, more self-esteem, and you're allowing these identities from your past to dictate your life 20 years later, 30 years later, then where are you going to be in another year? Where are you going to be in another year? And it's something that not too many people discuss. I know that because we live in a culture where it's expected that we get stuck in our stories, and we believe that that's the only way we can be. And that's simply not true. And I'd like you, if you're feeling like, okay, I get it, but how does that work? Just imagine for a second that when you were born, the thoughts and the feelings and the stories and all the programming and all the guilt and the shame, and if you were brought up Catholic, all the Catholic guilt, it got there somehow. You weren't born with Catholic guilt, were you? You weren't born shaming yourself, were you? Babies are like the most innocent creatures of them all because they're born pure. And I'm not talking about, I'm putting aside karma and that conversation right now. Babies as they are born pure before the programming. And it's society, right, that puts these programs into our brain, these habits into our brain. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but if you are operating from these systems that are as old as 40, if you're 45 years old, they've been going on for 45 years, how is that serving you? And getting back to the guilt, I just want to say that if you're somebody that tends to feel guilty a lot, I invite you to consider how that guilt is robbing you of your energy, of your personal power, of your dreams, of your self-confidence, how you interact with people, how you stand up for yourself, what you put in your body. And I could easily go there, right, with food and guilt. So as far as regret and guilt go, if you're noticing guilt come up, it's totally normal, okay? It's part of the human condition to feel guilt. And when I feel guilt or when I feel a difficult emotion, my go-to now is to look at that feeling and ask, what am I meant to learn here? And also, when you think about a guilty feeling, just like it's a habit in your brain to feel guilty, there's an opportunity to form another habit. It's called reframing. So if you're feeling guilty because you didn't spend enough time with your grandmother before she passed away, what is another way to program? What is another way to look at that? Gratitude is a big one. Like, I feel so grateful for all the times I got to spend with my grandmother when she was alive. Because let me tell you, warrior, those times in the past, oftentimes, guilt all the time is based on a reflection of the past. The past does not exist anymore. It's gone. The only promise that we have is in this particular moment. So if you continue to allow guilt and shame to steal your personal power away from you, again, let me ask you, what else are you allowing to steal your personal power? Because guilt and shame are big, big, big power buster, aren't they? Shame and guilt, I'm saying them often together in this episode because they're very tied together. Shame is just a much deeper rooted aspect of guilt. Shame is the result of, it usually has a time on it. It's guilt that it's like when they talk about depression. Depression is anger turned inwards. Shame is like guilt and anger and all the emotions turned inward. It's like all the negative emotions that have been buried and unexpressed. And it is the lowest vibrational emotion. I read something or I heard something somewhere, and I don't know the source, but you could probably Google it yourself and discover for yourself who said this and read up about it. But shame is a big, big killer. So if you are going around worried about, if you're somebody that tends to worry about death and dying, and you have a lot of guilt around death and dying and other people dying, I just invite you to consider what the cost is to you continuing to feel guilty, for you continuing to live in the past and allow those emotions to dictate how you feel every single day. And what is the cost to allowing shame to run your life? Because I tell you, as somebody who's lived through a lot of shame, and I've moved through it, and I'm here to tell the story about how it's possible to move through shame, see the other side, and know what's possible for you on the other side. I can tell you that shame is a robber of your life. Shame will eat away your insides. So the next time you notice guilty feelings, I invite you to stop and notice and ask yourself, first of all, what is causing these guilty feelings, and allow yourself to completely be in the moment, in the guilt, and learn more about yourself through this guilt. Because the last thing you want is to ignore another guilty feeling and allow more judgment of yourself to come up, more self-sabotage, more lack of self-trust and lack of self-worth. Right? Because at the bottom of this, what is foundational to having a radiant life, to having a fiery life, to reclaiming your fire, is having a high self-worth. And a lot of people don't realize that, because they don't fully understand what self-worth is. They think it's self-confidence or self-esteem, but they're actually all very different, because you can be confident and still have low self-worth. For example, you can study really, really hard for an exam and feel really prepared and confident that you ace the exam, but you can still have low self-worth because, say, you get your score back and it's not the score that you expected. You were attached. And you start to berate yourself because you didn't score as well as you should have. That's low self-worth. And low self-worth lingers on and on and on until you choose to raise it. And that involves a lot, I have to say, okay? Not a lot because it's easy and I don't want to make it sound hard, but it requires a big commitment, and it requires all the things that I talk about in the Empowered Warrior podcast. Same with self-esteem. Self-esteem is more of it's external validation, right? So you get high self-esteem by having other people validate you. So you go out and you get a really hot outfit and it looks amazing on you and everybody compliments you on it. So you're going to have more self-confidence as a result. And you can also have self-confidence on your own and still have low self-worth, like I mentioned. But self-esteem comes from the external world. So feeling like really hot because you have this brand new, you just bought a brand new Porsche and you're wearing a really hot outfit and you're getting validated for that. Everybody says you look good. That will raise your self-esteem. But underneath it all, the reason why you feel like you need to be validated is because you have no self-worth. You don't already know that for yourself. And self-esteem can vary up and down based on how other people talk about you. So if you are an online influencer, for example, if somebody trashes you online and you react thinking, taking it personally, right? You consume that black magic that person gave you. You can go from being in that Porsche and having the hot outfit to suddenly not feeling good about yourself, to having low self-esteem because of what somebody else said. And when that happens, that is an indication of low self-worth. Because if you really valued and had high self-worth, it wouldn't matter what people say to you. It wouldn't matter if somebody trashed you on the internet or somebody fed you black magic or said something really mean to you. You still know that you're worthy. Does that make sense? So there's often a lot of disconnect with those three concepts. And then what ties all these together is self-love. Really, in order to have self-worth, you need to have a lot of self-love and you need to work on loving yourself. So I know I went on a tangent there. This episode is more about guilt than self-worth, but it's all connected. It's all connected, and I guess it's coming through because somebody out there needed to hear this. So Warrior, I'm really excited because, first of all, if you listen to this to the end, you're going to have so many nuggets of information in your back pocket that you can use as tools. So I invite you to really sink into this content and listen to this podcast again. As I say, listen to this podcast with your journal and take some notes, do some journaling, answer the questions that I asked, because transformation really only happens, and the life that you want really only happens by repetition and commitment. So, and a lot of other things, but commitment to a lot of things, such as being more disciplined, for example. But to just listen to a podcast episode, nod and smile and say, yeah, I totally get that, that's not really knowing it. So to really change your life, you need to know these concepts. You need to live these concepts in your body, and it requires practice every single day. Because successful people, they know the value of practicing these skills. They realize that these are these skills that they really need to hone in on in order for them to embody them. So, and I mention this because you can do it. And, my goal in this planet and the work that I do on this planet is to make sure that you have as much information as possible to change your life, because it's possible. You know, things are opening up, as you already know, and I'm starting to spend more time with people that are, and I'm not saying this to be snobby or superficial or anything. I'm just sharing information that I think will be helpful for you. But I'm spending more time in conversation with people that are outside of my circle of friends who are into self-development. And I share this with you because I want to share my observation. And that is, there's people are in so much fear and self-doubt, and they're stuck in their whatever BS that they're stuck in, and they're unable to move forward. And I'm here to tell you that that is an option. That is optional. That is optional. And you can have whatever it is that you want in life. And for me, it came down to not just a matter of believing this to be true, but also taking really practical steps every single day to ensure that these steps became habits in my life. And my clients know that. Oh boy, do they know that. And, I know I used to mention in the podcast sometimes that I'm kind of a hard ass when it comes to working with people, but it's not a matter of being a hard ass. It's wanting what's best for you so that you get the results that you want, right? Because if you're going to invest the money in hiring somebody, you want to make sure that that person is going to get the results. So I share this with you because if you're considering working with somebody and you're considering working with somebody that's more higher end, the reason why they're higher end and the reason why it's going to be more of an investment is because these people are skilled at, all right, I don't want to speak for the whole industry, but chances are, okay, let me say it this way. If you want massive transformation, say you have this goal of becoming a millionaire and also having lifelong inner peace, are you going to hire the $100 an hour coach, or are you going to hire the $500 an hour coach? And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn. I'm saying this because what you're really saying is, if you're going for the lower price, or if you're saying that you're going to go on YouTube and learn it yourself, or whatever your objections are, because trust me, I've heard them all. What you're really saying is that you want the Gucci bag, but you're really only willing to pay for the Target bag. Right? Because most of us can identify with wanting something really nice and knowing how much some of these things cost. And another thing I want to mention is that if you bought an iPhone recently, or if you bought, a smartphone recently, those things are not cheap. If you bought a subscription service to your favorite clothing, or if you bought anything for yourself recently, chances are that is something that in everyday society is what many people would view as either a necessity, which, yes, I agree, we need phones, but do you need to have the $1,000 phone? Do you need to have the $1,500 phone? Or can you get by with maybe the $500 phone? And to the point about outfits and buying the expensive bags, because I know many, many people will go out and buy an expensive bag or an expensive piece of jewelry for themselves, but they won't invest in transformation, meaning they won't invest in a coach. What you're really saying is that you value external validation and the approval of others more than you value yourself and your own personal happiness and well-being. And I know that's a difficult pill to swallow, but I really invite you to sink into that a little bit and allow that truth to set in, because that is the truth. And I see it all the time. And what I've learned and observed in my clients and the people that work with me is that they're willing to wait for that $5,000 bag or that $1,500 iPhone until they make the investment in themselves and change their lives. And when they come out the other side, they can buy whatever they want. They can buy $1 million or $2 million home, or the $100,000 car and the, what are they called? The Hermes Birka bag. They can do all of those things because they've worked on themselves and they know their worth, and they can have it all. So I know I gave you a lot of things to chew on this episode. My goal was to talk about guilt and shame, but I went on into a lot of other things. But I really, this month of May feels very symbolic. And maybe it's because it is almost the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. There's a lot going on with me personally. I am celebrating my parents' 50th anniversary at the end of this month, which is technically their 51st. It was 50 was last year, but we didn't get together because of COVID. So there's a lot going on, and I just want to invite you to remember that, warriors, life is short, and we don't know. We just don't know things. We don't know our future. So if you have any inkling to change your life and live the best life that you can imagine, it's time to jump. It's time to put all 10 toes in the water and do it. All right, warriors. I hope this gave you a lot of food for thought. I love you all so much. I know I went a little bit longer than normal, but I really hope you found value in this. And if you did, please remember the giveaway. Please remember the contest. Tag your takeaways at I am Angela Noel. Subscribe to me on Instagram, subscribe to my podcast, and tag two of your friends on your Instagram when you tag me, and let everybody know what your takeaways are. All right, warriors, until next time, love you. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Empowered Warrior podcast. It is an honor and a privilege to have you as a listener. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast and would like to help others pave their pathway to freedom, end their disempowerment and suffering, and become an empowered warrior, please share this podcast with your friends and family. Also, it is my intention to help humanity grow and evolve to their highest potential. So if you really enjoy what you're hearing, please help me spread the word by leaving a review in iTunes. Thank you again, and I am so grateful to be able to serve you in this very exciting way.